Good morning, fam. Welcome back to Erica's EDC, and today we finally have the long-awaited review, the full review of the Spyderco Native 5 Lightweight in Maxamet Blade Steel. Guys, this is going to be a very informational testing review. We've carried this for over a month now, consecutively. I have a ton to share with you guys. We're going to go over the whole timeline of how this performed with 5 weeks of testing and the sharpening, the edge retention, the toughness, all of that good stuff. So I hope that you have a coffee maybe, or a different type of drink, maybe the Lord's drink, Dr. Pepper. This is a video where you can probably just turn it on and listen. I'm not going to be showing too much. I mean, you guys know what the knife looks like, so you can turn this on and listen to it, you know, while you're making your morning coffee or your breakfast or whatever. Let's get into it. I do have my coffee as well, Buckley's coffee. This is pumpkin cream, guys. It's back in season. It's pumpkin season. Gotta love it. Okay, so we tested this knife for 5 weeks. My testing, as you guys know, consists of a month or more sometimes of consecutive testing. I have to carry the knife all day, every day for a month. And I can't do the review unless I've done that and also sharpened it. So basically we have to use the knife in order to do the review. And that's just how I do things. I think it gives me plenty of time to really get an understanding of how the actual knife cuts, how the blade stock performs, the edge retention, all that good stuff. And the sharpening is really important because I touched on this in a previous video, but sometimes the factory edge is so burnt on a knife that it may not perform the same as, you know, 1 sharpening or even 5 sharpenings. You can really unlock a lot of characteristics of a blade steel when you actually use it, sharpen it. A lot can happen once you do that. So I don't think you can do a review unless you've actually like used and sharpened the knife. So we ran the factory edge on this for most of the time. The reason being is because Maxamet is very hard. It has very high edge retention. Therefore, I didn't need to sharpen it until literally like last week. And that kind of speaks for itself, right? So we know that Maxamet has incredible edge retention. It's a very high hardness steel. It's a powdered steel. It's a tool steel, actually. I'm sorry. It's a tool steel, and it is from steel mills where they made like rollers, these massive rollers basically, and Maxamet was used in the steel mills. It's not a knife steel. It has an origin somewhere else, but Spyderco has put it into the knife, and it's just a very high hardness, very high edge retention steel, but you are compromising toughness with that because it is so hard. The toughness, which is basically how the edge is going to take damage, the toughness is very low. It's not good. No bueno on the toughness, okay? So if you hit something hard with this edge, the edge is going to chip instead of roll. That's what toughness is, okay? So a knife with good toughness, the edge would actually kind of just like roll over, and you can almost like bend it back with a sharpening stone or what have you. So although this has really great edge retention, the toughness is absolutely horrific, okay? Now, I will say, this is not my first go around with Maxamet. I've tested quite a few knives in Maxamet, and the old ones that I tested, the toughness was way worse. So it seems like somehow along the way, Spyderco improved the toughness on the Maxamet. It is not nearly as chippy as it used to be, but in the sharpening, I chipped the knife, which we will get into in a little bit. There's already a video on that. I'm sure you've seen it. So we didn't need to sharpen the knife until very recently. The edge just kept going. It's really incredible how long you can use this knife for without having to sharpen it. I did strop it 2 times within that period where we did not need to sharpen it, but it did need a little bit of a touch-up at some points. So we did 2 stropping procedures. They were both the same, and you have to use either basswood loaded with some type of like diamond emulsion spray, or you have to use a very, very hard leather strop with diamond emulsion spray. I think you can call it like CBN or something too. I don't know. Basically, you cannot use like a cheap leather strop that's soft and squishy with that shitty clay compound crap. It's not going to do anything for this, really. You have to use a little bit of a higher quality strop and diamond spray because this is so hard, right? If you use a squishy strop with crappy compound, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to move any material. It's not going to polish the edge. So you have to have high quality sharpening and stropping tools to actually do anything with this blade. So we did strop it with the Michael Richter strop. He also made a diamond spray for that I put on there, 1.5 micron, and that worked very well for this knife. And eventually the knife did just need to be actually sharpened. So we took off that factory pattern, and I have a whole video explaining that sharpening procedure. It should be like 1 or 2 videos back. It's also on the sharpening playlist, so if you want to hear how I got the new edge on this, just go watch that video. Basically, I just used DMT diamond stones, 325, 600, and 1200, and that's what we used to sharpen this. And then we stropped it. And it did take a mirror polish after that, which this knife is really dirty and messed up, but I think you can see how reflective that is underneath. So we polished the edge during that one and only sharpening in the month. And the reason I wanted to polish the edge was because I've heard floating around many times that Maxamet does not do well with a polished edge. It does not hold its edge very well. It doesn't take a good edge when it's polished, and there's no point really. That, you know, you should just keep it at like 600 grit, leave it with a crazy toothy working edge, leave those carbides exposed, and that works better. But how are we gonna know if we actually try it, right? Like, I'm the type of person that, like, yeah, I hear you, but I actually want to see it myself. So I did polish the edge, brought it up to a mirror polish, and I ran it, which you can see that mirror polish finish has been used because, God, this thing is disgusting. So I tested the polished edge, and the rumors are absolutely correct. Like, spot on. It is incredible how crazy this edge did from factory, nice and toothy and crispy, for weeks and weeks and weeks, not needing to be touched up. And then I polished the fuck out of it, the living actual F out of it. And it is like, it does not feel like Maxamet. It's glassy, which I don't like. Feels like S45 VN, honestly. And if you guys know anything about S45 VN, if you polish it, it just loses all of its bite. It's super glassy, it glasses right out, and it's not the best to work with as a utility knife. Food processing, fantastic. But if you need that bite and that grit from the teeth, they're gone. And that's what happened to this Maxamet. It just glassed right out. Like, it didn't feel glassy at first. I have videos of me shaving my coworker's arm with this, and you can like hear the hairs just like popping off. I have a video of me cutting some paper with it too, and you can just hear how crispy that edge was. But that front end sharpness that we had when we initially polished this immediately disappeared, like within a couple uses. It's still sharp, but it is not even close to the same as when it was toothy. So that is a rumor or a conversation that I've heard that is actually true for once. Maxamet does not do well with a polished edge. There's no point in taking 2 hours in making it look beautiful like this because it's not going to perform well at all. It does much better with a 600 grit working edge. I'm glad that I put the 2 hours in and that I messed around with a polished edge because I wouldn't have known if I didn't try it. So I'm really glad that I did it, even though it took forever and it was kind of like useless, but now we know, right? The other thing that happened during that sharpening was that I did chip the edge, and I'm not going to go into like massive detail about it because we already have a whole video on it. But basically, right in here somewhere during the sharpening, I should have used a strop or a ceramic rod, something more gentle and softer, to deburr the edge, and instead I just went up to the next stone and the burr broke off, resulting in it taking some of the edge material, and we have some little microchips. They're not nearly as bad as they were. It seems like with use, this has kind of worked itself out, and I know once I do the next sharpening, they'll just be completely gone, but it did chip during the sharpening because I didn't deburr on something gentle enough. So, kind of a finicky steel, right? It's very hard. It was not made for knives. It requires high quality sharpening and stropping tools. You have to use diamonds to move that material because you need something harder than the Maxamet, and the only thing that leaves you with is like diamonds, basically. And it also will chip on you during sharpening if you do not deburr carefully. The rest of the, in its entirety, the 5 weeks went really well. The knife was incredible, and it's a crazy workhorse, and it did really well with the toothy edge from factory. Once this needs to be sharpened again, I'm actually going to reverse and go back to the 600 grit and just leave it at that, because I think that's what will be best for this knife. Even though this edge is very beautiful and shiny, I'm gonna take that mirror polish off, put it back to 600 grit, and leave it like that. I think it will perform way better. But the edge retention when you leave it toothy is unbelievable, and the toughness has gotten a little bit better than it was, but we still have to be careful, right? Like, you do not want to be cutting a box that has staples in it and hit the staple. That's going to be very bad for you. How did it compare to some other exotic, high quality, high performance steels, right? Like, how does this compare to S90V or MagnaCut or Rex 45 or K390? I'm sure you're asking that in your head, right? You also asked down in the comments many times. K390 is still basically one of my favorite steels. I think it is the perfect combination of edge retention and toughness. I really like K390, and I would choose it over Maxamet because it is less finicky, and you still have extremely good edge retention if it's from Seki City, Japan. I don't like the Golden Colorado K390. I swear it's softer, or the heat treat is different, because the Japanese stuff is much better. The USA stuff is not nearly as good. So if we're talking Seki City, Japan, K390, I like it better than Maxamet. Rex 45, same deal. I think you have extremely good toughness, really good edge retention. They run the Rex 45 a little bit lower than the Maxamet, and I feel like just for ease of use, like, just pick Rex 45. You don't have to be as skittish about it as Maxamet. It's just completely easier, and you're really not losing a bunch of edge retention qualities when you switch over to Rex 45. What about MagnaCut? I have a lot of experience with MagnaCut. I actually really like it. I just feel that if you want ultimate edge retention, it has to be ground pretty thin and treated pretty high, just from my use, and I have a good amount of use with it. So between MagnaCut and Maxamet, I'd actually choose Maxamet. Now, obviously, you have to keep in mind that you do not have toughness with this, especially compared to MagnaCut. MagnaCut is crazy tough. You can, like, blow through nails with that and it won't even do anything. It's crazy. But I feel that, like, up front, if we're talking production Maxamet versus MagnaCut, you're gonna get better edge retention with the Maxamet. A lot of the production MagnaCut is run at like 61, 62, maybe 63 if you're lucky. Blade stocks are generally thicker than they need to be, and the edge retention just isn't always there. And, you know, with Maxamet, no matter how you get it, the edge retention is just going to be king. So Maxamet 100% if it's MagnaCut versus Maxamet, but please just keep in mind this does not have toughness. S90V, what about that? That's a good one. a stainless option. MagnaCut and S90V are both stainless. The K390 and the Rex 45 are not stainless. So if we're doing S90V versus Maxamet, I'd honestly probably choose S90V. Again, from my experience, the toughness is better with S90V. You have crazy edge retention, and I don't care about stainless qualities at all. I actually really like patina, so that doesn't bother me whatsoever. But I think S90V is just a little easier to work with. It's easier to sharpen. It's not as chippy. It's just, I don't know, you don't have to think about it as much. So basically, Maxamet is one of those steels where if you know what you're doing and you're really into knives and you have the patience to understand it, totally worth the money. But if you're an average user and you're looking for a high quality, high performance steel, I'm not sure if Maxamet would be my recommendation for somebody entering this realm. It's just a little too finicky, it's a little too much, and it just simply wasn't made for knives, right? Like, this isn't for the average blue collar worker. It's going to fail you. I've even seen videos where people like gently, I wouldn't even call it pried with the knife, but gently did something where there was pressure, lateral pressure on the blade, and right where you see this grind line there, the blade snapped off. That's how hard it is. And I've seen that so many times. And cracks right here at that grind line. I've seen so many pictures of like where this just broke because it's so dang hard. Like, I genuinely think if I smacked this on my truck bed right now, because you guys are on the truck bed again, if I smacked it with enough force, like not even that much, but just a good little whack, I guarantee it would shatter. It's just so hard. So you have to be mindful when you're using it. It's not for the average everyday user. This is for someone that's more skilled, someone that is mindful of what they're doing, and someone that has patience to work through this, especially with the chips. I do genuinely think that with more sharpenings, this will get less and less chippy. It just seems to be more stable than the old Maxamet that I've used, like, geez, I don't know, 5 years ago or something like that. But it's definitely still chippy, and toughness is not even close to some of the other competitors. Lastly, just real quick before we wrap this up, let's talk about the stainless qualities. They're obviously not there. Maxamet is not stainless. It is a tool steel. So it got some rust spots, which I don't know if the camera will pick up because this is just so dingy and dirty, but it did pick up some rust spots from being in my gym shorts when I was sweating at work. And nothing crazy, but it did rust up in here and then down near the tip. Granted, it all looks disgusting right now, but it did pick up some rust, and that was just from like sweat in my pocket. It wasn't like pitting, you know, like when you have a 1095 high carbon knife and the rust will actually cause like the pitting in the blade. It didn't do that. It was surface rust that I could just, you know, scrub off real quick, basically. So that's good. It will rust, but it's not the same type of like rust that damages your knife, really. And the patina that it picked up is much more of a matte, dull patina as opposed to those bright popping colors that you get on those carbon steels. It just really got dingy and dark and just lost its shimmer, basically. I really like the patina that Maxamet takes. It just looks cool. Just old looking. So yeah, all in all, if you know what you're doing, try Maxamet out. Just make sure you have the right supplies to maintain it and be mindful while you're using it. That's basically it. We have tested the Native 5 lightweight model before, so I'm not gonna like go over the model as a whole. We were really just testing Maxamet. I already have a full review on the Native 5 lightweight. It's basically one of my favorite knives. The only thing that I'm not the biggest fan of is how sharp the edges are. They're like a little blocky in the hand, but other than that, It's one of the best EDC knives I've ever used. The forward choil is fantastic. Jimping is perfect. Very comfortable in hand. I have small hands, and it's extrememely comfortable. Very lightweight, very pocketable. Blade shape is freaking awesome. Still has incredibly smooth action for a lock back. They're just incredible knives. I love the Native 5 Lightweight. I cannot recommend it enough. It's genuinely one of my favorite knives. And I did run the Lynch Northwest Deep Carry clip on it. This is specifically made for the Native 5. This is the industrial heat treat finish. I ran that because I'm not the biggest fan of the Spyderco clips. Just awesome. This package right here is incredible. I just love the Native 5 Lightweight. It is an amazing EDC knife. So when you throw Maxamet on there and you know what you're doing, this is a very cool setup. Very, very cool. I hope that I kind of touched on all of the aspects that I wanted to. If there's anything that I missed, you can ask me down in the comments, but please maybe just go back and watch the update videos on this first, because I probably answered your questions. I did an update on this every single week until this review, and I recorded that massive video on the sharpening procedure and like really went in depth about that. So if you have a question about something I didn't touch on, just quickly go back and see if I answered it in a different video. Otherwise, leave it down below and I will try to get to you as soon as possible. But that is the full review after over a month of consecutive testing of the Spyderco Native 5 Lightweight in Maxamet blade steel. I hope that you guys enjoyed that. I will see you so soon. Go use your shit, learn how to sharpen your knives, and take care. I love you guys so much.